Hello, hello. Welcome to episode 41 of the Inside Social Work podcast. Today, my guest and I are both on Wurundjeri land, so we'd like to pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We are doing this via Zoom, but our guest Dom is also in the inner bits of Melbourne, so we both happen to be on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I'm really excited to be getting into some regular podcasting again after a longish summer break to rest and recuperate. The new season is going into full swing, which is super exciting. You heard in the last episode Amberly Moores talk about her work in disability, or Associate Professor Dr. Hazard about mindfulness and meditation, which has been a really popular episode, which is really nice to see. So we're at about 25,000 downloads across dozens of countries, which absolutely blows my mind. So I really wanted to thank all the listeners and supporters of the podcast. For those who have been interested in joining the Facebook group, you can find us over there, talking all things social work. You can sign up to the mailing list and you'll get a bit of a career guide and a few other things here and there as well. And we've talked a lot about supervision, so I know that a lot of practitioners have contacted me and people are showing interest in supervision, and I have decided to launch a trial for at the moment, a group supervision program through my private practice. So you can go over to the Therapy Hub, and under training there'll be a link there for supervision. Those will be capped at groups of 6. The focus will be primarily on youth mental health to start with, and if there's interest there for other areas, we can look at that as well. So if you're interested in joining one of those supervision groups, you can head over to the therapyhub.com.au website and check that out. Today's guest, so we've got Dom Alford here, and he is talking about his work at Relationships Australia Victoria and working with dads. So we talk a bit about the first 1,000 days of life and how important it is to have fathers involved right from pregnancy into early childhood and beyond. He shares some tips and resources for practitioners and service providers on how they can enhance their service to be more inclusive of fathers, things to be considerate of when running groups, and adapting what could be traditionally programs targeted at mums into programs that include dads or target dads specifically. So some really interesting things coming out of Relationships Australia Victoria. If you're interested in learning a bit more, you can head over to their website at supportforfathers.com.au, and there's some links there to resources for practitioners as well as resources for dads, and some additional training that you might like to participate in if you're a practitioner or a service provider. I hope you enjoy my episode with Dom. Welcome to another episode of the Inside Social Work podcast. We're at episode 41, which is super exciting. And today I'm interviewing Dom Alford. Alford or Alfred? Alford. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, Alford's fine.
Alford,
yeah.
A project coordinator at Relationships Australia Victoria. Welcome.
Thanks, Marie.
Do you want to just give the listeners a bit of a background into, I guess, maybe a bit of your career background and the role that you're in at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So the role is Project Coordinator Support for Fathers, and we're working with fathers, families and service providers around Australia to talk about fatherhood stuff, to talk about healthy relationships and families, and to talk about how services can engage with dads in much, in better ways, in more inclusive ways. And I came to this, to working for RAV, Relationships Australia Victoria. I've been on the project for 3 years now, and before that, I'm a social worker. So before that, I've worked a lot with children going through residential care and foster care, and that sort of foster care in particular. I worked a lot, many years there, and it's sort of where I sort of built my foundations as a social worker, I guess, and then after that, working a bit in family services and trying to work with the parents there around parent education stuff, as well as the family service work, and then moving more formally into parent education work, and discovering that working with dads in that arena was a huge gap, and there's sort of a lot of parenting information and education opportunities are for parents in general, but the people turning up are usually women, or 99% women, female, and so the importance of designing father-specific information was something I discovered then, and then this role came up, and it just sort of it was a perfect fit to be able to go out there and actually develop some of that information that's sort of filling that gap that I discovered in my own practice.
It sounds like it was such a natural progression in hindsight, working in foster care and family services and really looking systemically at some of the ways we can support whole families and communities.
Yeah, it was a natural progression. It was never intended. So it was a really nice sort of, when I look back, it's like, oh, that makes sense. But at the time, sort of just moving on to, I guess, just figuring out what the next sort of best thing to do is, and trying to, it's worked out well.
So tell us a little bit more about the parenting for dads and the support for fathers work that you're doing. What does that kind of look like? And even if you know a bit how the project came about through Relationships with Australia, Victoria.
Yeah, so it's part of a national federal government plan about reducing family violence in Australia. And we're just, the funding that we have for the support fathers is just one small part of that plan. It's a huge body of work they put together, but really the intention there is to engage men around fatherhood as a primary prevention approach to violence. So really just giving those dads opportunities to learn about fatherhood, to discover more about their own version of fatherhood, the kind of dad they want to be, the kind of relationships they want to have in their families, and just really so I've picked that up and just sort of said, well, I feel like we did a lot of research and consultations with dads, and the feeling was coming back that dads just really wanted lots of options around fatherhood. There's definitely a sense that dads don't have too many sort of, I guess, options, or other than being like a breadwinner, or the dad we kind of know really well in our lives is the dad that goes to work, when the baby's 2 weeks old or 4 weeks old or something, goes back to work, and that's their way of being a parent, is providing for the family in that way. And it sounds quite stereotypical, and it is, but it's also, that's mainstream Australia. So when we're talking dads across Australia, that's a huge role model that is out there for lots of dads. So really just trying to provide options to that role model. So saying that's, and definitely not saying that's a bad way of being a dad, because you don't want to put people off, and you can't change what's, the structures that are out there overnight. So accepting that, and then providing some options and getting people to explore, well, what are the other ways I can be a dad, and it doesn't have to be a provider, a breadwinner. And there's also dads actually out there already doing this, or looking for options and already doing these things. And so it can help to either validate what they're doing, or help them just kind of go, oh, actually, I was thinking about that, and here's some sort of confirmation that I can go down this pathway. So I think that's been really, and that's something we've aimed to do, and I think we've achieved that in a small way, and hopefully we continue to do it and reach more dads.
That sounds really interesting. Through that research and kind of asking dads what they wanted, was there anything that came up that was a real surprise to you, that really challenged maybe a misconception you had, or ideas you had about what people consuming that content would want?
Yeah. Look, we in the survey we ran very early on in the project. The one thing that came up that did surprise me a bit, and I guess I didn't know the answer, but we asked dads, who do you talk to about fatherhood? Because we're really interested. It was like, we feel like dad's got a lot to, they're thinking about fatherhood and they want to explore it, but who do they talk to about it? And so their partner was the number one person that they talked to. So, mum or their partner. But I did expect, and then they didn't talk to their mum or their own mum or dad about fatherhood. And I kind of thought they might have, and I kind of thought that they came up as the person they speak to the least about it all. And I thought that was it was surprising to me. Maybe not. I didn't expect a lot of dads to talk to their own dad about fatherhood, because I think that's part of that sort of stereotype that you sort of, you might not talk about that kind of stuff. But I thought they might have talked to their mum or something about father. So that was really interesting, because just brought it back to thinking about, well, where do we learn about parenting? Who do we learn about parenting from? Who do we learn about being a dad from? And the strongest influence you have in your life about who you are is what you learn at home. So if you're not talking to your own parents about it, then who are you talking to about it, and how do you? So it just sort of surprised me that maybe there's not many role models or things that people have actually learned from. Maybe they're just figuring it out as they go along. So just highlighted even more the importance of the information we put out there.
Wow, that's really interesting. I guess as a family therapist, I can kind of see how some of the cultural impact of stereotypes can really have that impact, where it's like, maybe if I didn't have that relationship with my own dad, why would I talk to him about it now when I'm at my most vulnerable or my most scared? Or sometimes people's good intentions is to offer advice rather than let you just sit with that confusion. So I can see why. I mean, it is a surprise to me too, but I can see how it can kind of happen.
Yeah, definitely. It was the biggest surprise was who are you talking to about this stuff?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you have huge conversations and deep and meaningfuls all the time, but even just to bounce ideas off about parenting stuff. So so kind of finding that people probably rely on their most intimate relationships for this stuff is so I guess it's good in one way, but then it is also quite healthy to have different avenues to talk about fatherhood stuff. So other dads, your own dad, your own mum, lots of options to get different versions and perspectives.
So through that, sort of the survey and a bit of that research, what were then some of the products or services or campaigns? What was created from that?
Yeah, so that breadwinner provider type dad was really the biggest thing, and we've got one of our resources called 7 Types of Dad. So that's based off some research that had already been done throughout Australia, and just picked up on that, and really just a lot of our work's really trying to translate the research that's already out there into really stuff that is easy to read, digestible by the average person, and it's not sort of heavy on all the lingo and sort of researchy stuff. So 7 Types of Dad is really just addressing that breadwinner role and just sort of saying, here's some other versions of dads that you might already be doing, but it gives you a chance to reflect and explore the different ways. So there's sort of the different types, sort of hats you put on at different times of the day, whether it's bedtime and you're affectionate dad, and, it's hugs and kisses and good night and that kind of stuff. And whether it's, getting ready for school, you're a responsible dad and make sure you're organized and that kind of stuff. So just sort of breaking down some of the roles that to highlight the importance for these dads, and breaking out a bit from that provider role, but acknowledging that it's one of the barriers is that men are expected to be at work when they're dads, and they generally do stay at work. There's lots of stats around in Australia around a lot of dads end up being at work full time when the baby's born, and they stay at work even when the kids are older. And those things haven't changed in the last 20 years. So we've also one of the other resources about work and family balance. I guess talked about a lot, but really they're just saying to dads, have a conversation before you have a kid, if you can, if you have thought about it, but have a conversation with the partner about what you actually would like from work, what's your ideal situation. And so some people don't want to work part-time, and that's fine. But if you've got the opportunity, if you've got flexible work options at work, just, talk to your workplace about it. But actually the follow-through, I think, is the bit that is missing with that. I hear lots of stories about men wanting to work part-time, or the ambition to when I have kids, or when they're older, when they go to school, whatever, I'll work part-time. But the stats are saying that in 20 years, nothing's changed. Dads are at work full-time when the baby's born, and they stay that way. And mums are the ones doing part-time work, and it means that mums are the ones doing lots of the home, household, domestic stuff. And so lots of our resources are underpinned by sort of a gender equity, with a gender equity lens, and really looking at how dads can play a greater role in the domestic stuff in life, and so it's all about trying to achieve more balance in that. Promoting gender equity, and that's sort of some of our resources. And we've also put together a professionals toolkit for support services to engage dads more effectively, and that's really looking at we've broken it up into sort of 7 elements, and it's really about a step-by-step guide. If you had to design a program from scratch, you could use it from element 1 to 7. But if you're just looking at the way you put together your flyer for a dad's program or something, then you jump to element 2, promoting to dads. Or if you just you already run a program with dads and you're wanting to look at how you maintain and keep those dads engaged, then we've got a whole section about keeping dads engaged. So it's about just providing the research that's out there to these professionals, and some little checklists and tip sheets and ideas about how they can work more effectively with dads. And really the main thing that comes out of that, we do training around that toolkit. We do a working with dads training session, and it's really just about, have you talked to these dads about what they want out of your program? Have you actually asked them, is this what you want? Do they want a play group? Is that, do they want something different? Do they want to, and then also providing some options around what you're offering. So just having a play group might be great for a certain bunch of dads, but there's probably a whole nother bunch of dads in your neighborhood who are looking for something, but they're not interested in a play group. They just, maybe they want a parent education session, or maybe they just want to really know even more casual dads catch up or something, or maybe they just, so really just thinking more broadly about what you're offering. Because from what I can see, I've had the opportunity to travel around Australia and visit and speak to lots of people about doing this kind of work with dads, that everyone's just offering one thing, and it's a great thing, but I just wonder, what if we had more options for those dads in your community? And yeah, that's tricky, but it's, I guess, just highlighted then that not every dad's going to want to do this. So there's lots more dads out there that you're missing out on.
As you were describing that last little bit, I was busily jotting down notes, because my brain was thinking about all the different social work skills that are coming through in what you were describing. So, I've got the website open here up on another screen, and we've got the resources for dads, but you're also talking about getting professionals to think about how they include dads in their work. There's education, support, safety, reduction, stigma reduction, health promotion, and then thinking about empowerment and person-centered work, and then the creativity and flexibility. And that can be really overwhelming to start from scratch, but also really exciting that you're taking what we know about research. And we talked earlier about these first 1,000 days of life before we started recording, but how we can enhance outcomes for children and families and future generations by starting working with dads. Like, I think that's a really interesting, exciting, probably overwhelming project.
Yeah, I think definitely at the beginning it was sort of like, well, I don't know where this is going to end up after 3 years. But now I look back at it and it sort of makes sense. And yeah, and looking into the future, that first 1,000 days is really about focusing all that kind of work on the first 1,000 days of the child, sort of from that includes pregnancy through to the child's second birthday, so that the services that the dads come across then through from the midwife to the birthing hospital to maternal child health and more services in that time. But really that's just still the biggest gap in how dads are engaged in the work that we do. So there's social work in there, but there's also the health services, and they're really keen on doing more about it, because I think they see the benefit when dads are more involved in before the birth. And really, if we're serious about supporting mums through pregnancy and birth and recovery after birth, and being at home with a baby, then the person that you need to talk to about the support after mum is dad or the partner. The conversations just do not happen, and we put all this pressure on mums to know it all and to get it and to put it into place and put it into action and give birth and go through all that, and do all the hard work, and then we just hope that they have support around them. But what if we're just talking to dads about this just as, and putting the importance on them just as much as mums? Because there's a lot of dads that could just, who do all this stuff, but if they were being told this is your job, this is your role, they would take it on and they would just love it, and they would make the most of it and be as supportive as they could.
So I'm hearing some of the things you're saying really show that dads want to be included and want to be more involved, but there's either some policy gaps in terms of flexible work, and that might even just be in a cultural sense around, you might have it written down somewhere in a dusty HR file or in a drive somewhere on a laptop computer, but it doesn't mean that in practice those things are easy to implement. Reducing your EFT or having flexible work, but also maybe there's a gap in confidence and then finding the right resources. Is that does that kind of fit with what you're seeing?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, there's I think I talk to workers about it being, it's not just that dads, there's a bit of a 10-way street when it comes to dads engaging with services. It's not just that. Maybe it's about the culture of your program at the time. Maybe, I can think back to working in family services where you would always speak to the mother because the dad was usually absent. It's pretty hard to reach, and often not living with the family. But when the opportunity came to speak to a dad, people would always sort of just felt like, well, that's going to be a hard conversation, so it's easy to talk to mum, so I'm going to call mum anyway. And the same happened in foster care, where we would just call the foster mum, even though we had a super engaged foster dad, and they were trained and they'd been assessed and they were onboarded, everything, but we'd call the female carer because it felt simpler or it felt easier. And that was a lot of it just seems to be that, just not it's ingrained in us a bit, and it's historical, of course, where services are just used to working with women and mums, and that kind of historical stuff stays around with you, and even though if you're a new worker, it's sort of you just fit into the culture of the workplace, and that stuff's still there. So it actually takes a bit of an effort to sit back and go, oh, actually, no, I need to make sure Dad's on board. I need to have Dad in for the next appointment, and actually making a special effort to make it happen. It takes more time out of your day. It's harder. The work's a bit harder, but I guess what we're trying to do is look at the long-term outcomes and say, well, it might be a bit harder at the beginning, but your long-term outcome is going to be so much better if you've got sort of a family unit around, particularly when I'm talking about it with a newborn or something, you've got a whole sort of great support network you've developed because you've engaged Dad more.
Yeah. So you've got, the website's got heaps and heaps of resources. For those listening, what are some tips that you might want to share with them around thinking now about involving dads? What are some things you'd like to see them doing in their work? So we've got people that work across family services, disability, mental health, in schools, in a range of different sectors, policy, local government. For someone listening who's like, yeah, I want to do something different, I want to change my practice.
Yeah.
What are some things that they can start doing?
I think getting to know some of the research that's out there around fatherhood. It's a pretty broad topic, fatherhood, but if you just do a quick Google search, and then definitely have a look at our website, we've got lots of links there, but there's lots of great stuff that's already out there that's existing, and I talked about our toolkit, but there's heaps of others out there that have been developed for us in Australia. And that's sort of a great starting point. Just get to know some of the reasons why engaging dads is important, and that'll help you just with being motivated, but also just being able to talk to these dads and having some information to say, these are the reasons why it's important you're involved, and the things you're doing are so helpful because of this. So yeah, looking at the research is really great, and I guess just getting to know your dads is something that it can be hard in some of the services you mentioned there. I understand, but someone from a local council, I mean, that's sort of a huge gap there, where getting to know their big part of their role is getting to know their community. So why not get to know the dads in the community and see what they want from the services, or so whether it's just through running a bit of a survey, or whether it's just that you hold an event or do a Father's Day thing and they use it as a chance to sort of get to know the local dads and what they want from your services, or your parent or your family support groups, or whatever it is. So getting to know dads and asking them what they want to do. And I guess that coming back to that what I referred to before about providing choice, I think, and trying to think of dads as being quite diverse. I've noticed that in the groups that I've run, where in one room of sort of 20 or 30 dads, I'll have a single dad, I'll have a separated dad, I'll have a dad with 2 kids, dad with 4 kids, full-time dad, stay-at-home dad. I guess just, or a foster dad as well, or a granddad, father figures as well. Getting to thinking that you're providing a choice of programs for a diverse range of dads, not sort of just having a vision of dad as being a singular thing. There's a lot more to it, and that might be really helpful just to kind of think about the things you're offering. So, and separated dads is a good example, where for separated families, maybe you're offering child-friendly events, but they're not, or kids aren't always with them, or something like that. We work with a lot of family relationship services, and they work with separated families, so they're always mindful that the kids aren't with those parents all the time. So if they offer things, it's not going to work for everyone. So they try and offer a variety of things so that there can be dads only things or parent only things. So that's sort of, really coming back to there's more diversity in dads than maybe you initially think about. So that's just a reflection and having a good chat about it.
If we break it down even to the initial kind of face-to-face or telehealth contact, what are some ways that that workers or social workers, whoever's kind of in the service themselves, can have those, normalize some of that experience? Like, is it worth sort of saying, do you feel like you're not often included? Is there something we can do different? Like, what are some things that workers can do? And I mean, it's already given me ideas of how I can even enhance my own practice, but what can people start saying to dads when they have them there on the phone or in the room to start getting a bit of that buy-in and recognizing and validating their experience, but also kind of pitching to them the outcomes and benefits of involvement in a non kind of judgy way?
Yeah, I think what I also include in the talk is about being really clear about the role that you play, and the reason why they're in the room or something like that. Whatever it is, just being really clear when you start the conversation. There's something, I guess, and I haven't got a whole heap of evidence, but there's something about men and trust and services that sort of is not gelling, and so building that trust could be about just being really clear about your role but the dad's role in being there and what they can get out of it. And so just being clear in that, but in a really positive way, I think, and just sort of saying, these are some of the things that could happen that you could get out of it, and maybe providing a bit of a story for them or some sort of anecdote from another dad that's come through the service that you could sort of say, this is the kind of thing that's happened for someone else, and this is what they got out of it. And then you could just sort of say and move the conversation to, well, what are you looking for? What's sort of the main reason why you wanted to come along today, or what can we do differently next time, to make it better for you. And just being really upfront is really works for dads. I don't know whether that's a dad thing, but I think just being really clear and really sort of just to the point is really valuable. And as I said before, just asking them what they want. So if you're looking to run a program or a service or some activities, kind of saying, well, we've got some ideas. Here's just, read off the ideas and say, well, which ones actually do you think are going to work? Which ones would you actually come along to? Just being really clear.
Yeah. And do you find marketing specifically to dads creates more interest? So if you're running a program, instead of just saying parenting program, saying, emotional intelligence coaching for dad, like specifying the target audience, does that tend to generate a little bit more interest from dads?
Yeah, definitely. Most definitely. Like it's just the biggest thing I hope that people get out of the training that we do is just realizing that you have to be really explicit around your promotional stuff. It's just so important because, and saying just how you put it, Marie, is just, dad's, emotional intelligence session or dad's workshop or whatever, and it could be a newsletter that you say, to parents, to mums and dads, if you want dads to read it, you have to invite them. And that's the way of inviting them. And then it's being explicit is important mainly because this is a hard to reach audience, and they're not the ones who are used to reading the flyers and the newsletters you get from school or from the organization or the council. Like who's reading all that stuff at the end of the day? I'm sure you guys would know who you might have an idea, but you should look at it. And I'd be guessing that most of the times in families, it's going to be mum reading that, and maybe she passes it on to dad, but maybe, it doesn't happen. Or who signs up for newsletters at schools and who gets all the communication, and it's usually mums. So if you're really explicit and you want to get dad's attention, you've got to put the word dad on it, and just be really clear. And again, this is about being clear, but it's a hard to reach audience, so you've got to change the approach a bit.
Yeah. Do you find, are there any sort of extra considerations with same-sex families? Because I've seen there are some resources on your website that are very inclusive. Are there anything in particular we need to kind of keep in our minds when working with families where it's two dads, or in particular, because we're talking about dads, so we'll go with that.
Yeah, of course. It's this with same-sex family. It is. I guess it just depends on that family, the individual family. I think it's a bit of a different area you can go into, where it's about the roles that they play in the family, really, between those two dads. I think the stuff around promoting and saying, this is for dads is the same, but the roles and sort of stereotypes that are in the family, yes, all our resources are pretty based around a heterosexual family. So that's something that we're very mindful of, but some of the stuff I've seen around same-sex couples and two dads is that it's quite different, and the roles can be quite split up, or they do sort of mimic a mum and dad role, but it's quite individual, and there's sort of no, I guess you're just adding to the diversity there. But I would just think if you're working with a family, it'd just be about exploring those topics with them, with both the dads, and saying, well, where are your strengths, and where are your sort of gaps, and what do you like to do, and what roles do you play?
All right, great. While you don't work directly with little children, I'm guessing you don't work directly with
no, just parents. Okay. Yeah, we do dads and kids stuff, but it's just it's pretty casual.
Other podcast guests who work with with children or infants really talk about the internal work that they have to do, that thinking about parenting or early years often gets you reflecting on your own sort of experience growing up. Are there any thoughts you have on that, on just what support you've put in place for yourself in kind of processing and learning some of these things, and how you reflect on your own life?
So are you sort of thinking about my own life now and when I was a child? Yeah.
Like sometimes when we're learning about it, attachment, for example, we start to think about our own childhood and our own attachment figures, or when we're thinking about gender norms, we start to question and look at back in history. Are there any specific things that you've done?
Definitely. Look, just reflect on my own. That comes up all the time. Always, this job is this role is great in so many ways, and then other ways you're sort of like trying to be that that perfect dad that I guess there's in there somewhere in all the resources we put out there. But really I think it really highlights, like for me, I work part-time, and that's sort of something I think regardless of this learning about this stuff I was really keen to do as a dad, just because I really love just being at home and working less, to be honest. But it's really just highlighted all the stuff that I guess we're trying to promote in there around gender equity in the family home, that to achieve gender equity in society, we have to talk about men and doing more domestic work in the home. So that's really, for me, that sort of highlights that. And then also just the work and family balance stuff, that workplaces aren't great at recognizing men as being dads. I think when they see women in workplaces and they a woman will go off and become a mother, it's quite obvious. They sort of become pregnant, they're away for 12 months and then come back part-time. There's a lot of change, and it's really blatant. But for men becoming dads, it's a bit invisible sometimes. They go away for 2 to 3 weeks and they're expected to do exactly the same thing, and they're not sort of viewed as a dad. And I think my experiences in workplaces where it's been unsupportive and then where it's been really supportive, and happy to say it is really supportive now, that sort of just highlighted the importance of maybe, just the workplaces and their views of dads is a huge gap as well. There's a lot of great things happening there. And that's, I guess, personally coming back to me, is just in my own experience of my dad. He just worked so much and he works from home 7 days a week, and it was just that's how he was raised, and he was raised to work hard, and that's what he did, and that's how he provided. But it wasn't necessarily what a child's looking for, and so that's how I've learned, and I've learned that, and then I'm really keen to do something different to that, I guess. And I see a lot of that in some of the dads that come through our groups, that sometimes they want to do something really different to how their dad parented them. And so that's sort of my driver, I guess. Or that's sort of, I keep getting reminded about that when I do this work.
Yeah, excellent. Do you have any particular things you do around sort of self-care and burnout? Maybe not necessarily specific to this role, but even just the last kind of year and the changes in our work-life balance and the way in which we're working. Extra challenges.
Lockdown wasn't helpful.
Of course.
Homeschooling wasn't helpful. That was not good for burnout. But and I guess what the things that I do is really just I find just trying to find moments where I can just really enjoy being with my kids. So enjoying whether it's just a 2-minute window when I'm working from home and just sort of popping out and seeing them, and getting a cup of tea or a piece of toast or whatever, or if it's lunch break and it's a good half an hour, just sort of really making sure that I'm actually just enjoying the time with them and not sort of distracted by anything else, just sort of really dedicating that time. I actually find that's really good for my mental health, because it's enjoyable, and it's, when you hang out with kids, it's always going to be something fun, because they're kids, and just really enjoying that they're learning, or what they got to show you, or what the stories they got to tell you. And I've just found, especially working from home, that's actually been a really nice part of it, and it's actually helped my well-being, because it just gives you good feelings, and that's sort of good for your self-care. But yeah, I guess finding time for myself and finding and having chats with other dads about fatherhood stuff is really important. People outside your home, friends and siblings or whatever, that's really useful.
Excellent. And just kind of wrapping up, for those interested in learning more, where can they go to find out more or upskill, do some training? What are some of the things that you offer? And I can put links to them in the show notes as well.
Yeah, well, so everything that we've talked about and all the resources, and there's more, and any kind of fatherhood programs are links on our website, which is supportforfathers.com.au. So there's everything we've done, we just put up there. It's all available, and there's links to sign up for our training. So we run sessions for dads monthly online at the moment, and that's free. And then there's training for professionals called Working with Dads, and you can sign up for that. It's happening a couple of times this year. And then we do lots of other things just for sort of one-off things for organisations. So for example, I'm doing a session with some foster dads in New South Wales in soon, and then doing a session for a council for their dads in the area as well. So it's just, we're happy to take on any kind of requests and work with those bunch of dads there.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for being a guest on the podcast.
Yeah,
It's been
thanks,
really
Marie.
interesting, and I'm sure it'll create some new ideas and get people thinking about how they can be more, inclusive and creative in their work with families and bringing dads into the space.
Yep. Fantastic.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast episode with Dom Alford. If you'd like to join the Facebook group, you can find us at Inside Social Work. You can check out the resources on the website, insidesocialwork.com/episode 41. If you'd like to support the show, there is a PayPal link on the website or in the show notes on your podcast app. If you want to get involved with some of the work that we're doing and you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can contact me through the Facebook group, and I can send you an expression of interest form, and we can talk a little bit more about the stories that you have to share, any research that you're doing, and it'd be really great to hear the voices of more social workers on this podcast. Bye for now.